Let me ask the first question to Rahul. Rahul, you have done an MBA from MIT, and but the focus of your focus has always been people and their wellness. What's your why? What's your calling?
That's such a nuanced question and a difficult one. It's one that I ask myself every day. Well, it actually started with India. Even though I grew up in the suburbs of New York City and New Jersey, I spent every summer going back to India to visit family. My cousins, my grandparents were there. And it was really kind of experiencing having one foot in each one of those worlds. And India obviously has grown substantially in the last couple decades, but during those early 90s, it was very different from my New Jersey upbringing. I remember getting off the plane in Mumbai and thinking to myself, like, wow, this like, did I just enter a war zone with that old airport and the chaos and everything? And I would walk around the streets of Mumbai and Pune, and I would just see people all over the ground that were in poverty, and there were lepers back then, and things like that. And it really shook me. It shook me that one single doctor couldn't necessarily help all these people. This was more of a systemic issue. This was more of a macro level issue. And so when I was going to college, it was very important to me that I focus on systemic level change on something that can affect them very deeply and personally, which was their health. And so I went to Tufts for my undergrad with a focus on community health as well as international development. And so the first part of my career was very much focused on helping the physical nature of people in more marginalized communities. And that's afterwards I joined the UN, and I joined USAID and worked in Africa as well as parts of Latin America. Now I have much more of an interest in people's mental health and mental wellness, just because I think my own personal interest in being in a lot of different pressure cookers like MIT and McKinsey, where you have a lot of that daily pressure. It's a different type of challenge when all your physical needs are being met, but you're still not optimizing for your own personal sense of happiness. And so that's really been my motivation there. Okay, how can we make people, not only when they're ailing of physical ailment, but at the same time in their day to day, as they're going through that grind, especially during times of uncertainty, like we're seeing right now, how can we help them live more fulfilling, more purposeful lives?
That's a great purpose to have, Rahul. And since you have seen India, so I'm sure a lot of these images, a lot of your experiences have stuck with you, and those really help you do what you're doing today. Great job. Thank you so much. Looking forward to speaking with you more in the session. Uh, Etin, you have also kind of moving in a direction where you are a lot concerned about wellness of the world, your wellness, people's wellness, and your latest venture, Countable. You are although you're a CPA, but it's a tech platform for CPA by CPA. Tell us a little bit more about your second innings, how things have changed for you, how your perception has changed, and about Countable as well.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the question. And Rahul, I think part of it resonates with me. The way my journey happened, I moved about 15 years ago to Toronto, and I've been in the grind for, I cannot imagine how long. And being an accountant, you live for January to May, and the rest of the year is catching up the breath so you can get ready for the next year. And try living that for the rest of your life. And it's just by the time you come out of the December holidays, you're already anxious going into the busy time of the year. It is a very, very different lifestyle, and so there's no thinking time, no time particularly. You're always behind the eight ball. So when you get to the top and you look at it, and all you see is success, but no satisfaction, and then you start to define satisfaction differently. because you've tried all kinds of money aspects of it. You can spend as much as you want, you can take trips, you can do whatever, but you're still craving this learning, creating, experiencing opportunities that you just don't get. And then I come across the book, Be the Change You Want to See, and something that I was not really truly resonating until I really hit hard and start to realize that where is my passion is there, but the alignment of purpose was not there. Why am I solving a problem of one person at a time? How do we really take the passion and align that with the purpose that allows you to solve a billion people problem if we can, or a million people problem if we can? And why are we not doing it? Why is it so hard? And we're still working 18 hours a day. So what's not changing? And why don't we use that direction a little bit differently? And maybe we can make a meaningful shift. And that's what caused Accountable to come to exist. We are a platform which are focused on education as a bedrock, and we're looking to build something that allows people to save time and give them that thinking time. Then they can choose, then they have a choice. They can choose to either go out and get more clients, or choose to spend that time with the family and improvement for themselves, and so on and so forth. And that's where the education piece comes in, where now we want to help them understand how life, the way we understand, the way other people understand how life could be truly balanced in a meaningful manner. That's what the goal of Accountable and my particular goal is.
Excellent. That's a great thing. So yes, so I think you're absolutely correct. I think in a very famous book of Napoleon Hill, he clearly mentioned that success is not what you have achieved. Success is measured by number of obstacles you have overcome. It's not measured by number of things that you have. It's measured by number of obstacles you've overcome. So that's a great point again. So success for a lot is money and all those things around it, materialistic success. But I think more meaningful success is when you are truly living a meaningful life and making a difference in people's life. A lot of people are not able to identify this. You have identified this, and congratulations for that. Dr. Rana, you have been a veteran and you are about 70 years old. You have seen everything from for being a mentor to corporate life to being a professor and startups. Now, what do you enjoy the most?
Yes, Amit, I'm looking at the previous speakers and these patterns are that they're describing are so commonplace. And in very simple terms, I describe this as curse of humanity. That we have so many questions, and we know very well, the thinking people, that there are no answers to certain questions, but we cannot stop seeking answers from that. And that is the curse of humanity. Okay. We believe that we have a higher purpose in life, but believe me, there is none. Okay. So in simple terms, what I found is that at any point in time, there is something that you are thinking that you should be doing, and there is actually something that you're doing. If there is a disconnect between these two, and over a period that disconnect grows, no matter what you do. Okay, that is the chaos theory. So when the disconnect grows, you tend to be unhappy, right? So you want to bring them together, and you're trying hard, and you can't bring them together, right? And that is the struggle. But what happens is that what you are thinking, that is not static. That changes over a period of time. Today, you are interested in something. Today, A gives you pleasure, A gives you happiness. Tomorrow, B gives you pleasure and happiness. Okay, these things are not constant. Okay, so if these things are not constant, the mechanisms for aligning them are not constant. So it's a continuous effort that you're doing. And the only way to have that balance is to just watch this drama that goes on, that this is what we are, this is what humanity is, this will go on. So if you create some distance from that phenomena and let things happen, okay, I'm not going to get rid of this struggle. It's not going to go away. But I can be less impacted at certain level by this struggle and take this as a normal struggle. So that's what I found. So I'm able to keep a distance from what I actually do, and uh, as a person who is impacted by that, I'm not too much impacted by what I do right now. Uh, another thing that I have is, no matter what I say there, it's not correct. Okay, the moment I utter it, it becomes incorrect. Things are changing so dynamically that I cannot claim that that something is true, something is right, because it is not. Okay, if it is right at the moment, it won't be right at the next moment. So it's such a fleeting thing that's going on, and that's what there is to it. You know, uh, when you describe people by their resumes, their past, achievements or failures or whatever, to me, that doesn't make any sense. If our past is defining our future or creating a perception about us, that to me is a big bottleneck. And that's the issue exactly we deal in corporate decision making. When we are data driven, you are looking at the past. Uh, if past is limiting our future or describing us, then there is no scope for innovation. There is no scope for creativity. There is no scope for evolution. And evolution is going to happen no matter what there.
Absolutely.
You can be burdened with the past and just stay there, or just go with the flow with the evolution and don't be burdened with the past. And
Absolutely.
only way that you can achieve that is by creating a distance between what
Absolutely.
is going on and
That's a
uh,
very important point, Dr. Rana. I think
yeah.
change is the only constant. We all know that, and things will keep changing. And people do things first, and then they justify it. And your past is not going to define your future. I think those are very important concepts that Dr. Rana has mentioned. Totally agree with you. I think Shani was nodding her head and smiling. And Shani, you have been helping about 1,400 startups. So tell us a little bit more about it. And you were also agreeing, Dr. Rana. So tell us about that as well.
So first of all, thank you so much, Dr. Anas. I mean, this was very inspiring, especially in my case. I mean, in this early in the morning, I did not expect these pearls of wisdom, but I completely agree, and I really, really appreciate you reminding me of the kind of the, validating. I know you say everything you say, the second you say it becomes being true, it starts being true, but you just simply validated I think our existence overall. It is about the gap. It's definitely about the gap, and it's kind of also where we fit in. We work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are visionaries, and it's great. And there's also a lot of, obviously, as you guys know, there's a huge hype around startups and the ecosystem. Everyone's chasing the exit. So it also creates this huge layer of noise, and you got to filter through. But our work has become more about identifying the assets and the values within that noise, right? So it's not about, when entrepreneurs come to us, we try to figure out what it is and what they're trying to create that has value, not just for 3 layers, right? For the community, from a technology standpoint, but also for them, because, as you mentioned, it's about getting through these obstacles, identifying what it is you want to do, identifying where it has value. And then the worst thing is, unfortunately, also identifying business model where the market fit, what we call the market fit, which is the most annoying thing in the world. But, this is something this is a trick that the consulting firms have came up with, that and storytelling, to define a value of a company, to try to figure out why a company becomes a success and why it doesn't. So going back to where our focus is, we started by looking to develop and invest in startups, early stage startups that will help artists make money. We wanted to create a social correction from the tech giants that actually kind of destroyed the industry for the creators. If it's, from Napster to YouTube, and Apple defining the cost of a song by $1 regardless of the production costs, or all these different models that only took into consideration the financial aspect and the technology aspect, but not actually the needs of the creator community. So that's where this started from. We started in Israel, and it's expanding worldwide, and it's great. Unfortunately, it's very much a niche because people still are not focused enough on that. So we're working with Deloitte, we're working with other firms to try and educate entrepreneurs on how to identify the pain points of the industry and build solutions for that space. Now, doing that, we've been working with the largest organizations in the world, from the Schubert organization to the music labels to everyone across the board, and they've also identified that they have to follow the need. It's not enough about just to focus on the business model. They have to follow the pain points. They have to follow the need. And to do that, you got to be in listening mode. You know, when we first started Techno, the first year we started Deloitte, I think in 3 months, I met with about 500 startups, including, you know, artists in pain, trying to figure out what they're doing next. You have to listen. So a lot of our work is listening. There's definitely a psychological aspect to that. A lot of it discusses the gap of what it is that the entrepreneur actually wants to do and why they're doing it. Big chunk of the value of the process. What we do the best we can to navigate in the right direction based on our experience. You know, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It's an exciting challenge, but it's a challenge.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yes, so Shani is doing fabulous work for people who are artists and painters and trying to give them platforms so that their businesses can also grow. Great work, Shani, there. Coming again to you, Etin. Uh, so a lot of people in the world, like yourself, like for example, your specialty is CPA, but Countable is more of a platform, a technological platform which you perhaps do not have a lot of expertise in, like the technicalities of it, the how to develop a software platform. So whether an entrepreneur who has great ideas but who cannot do software development themselves should be doing such stuff, and what are the pros and cons of it?
Yeah, there's a lot of really factor. I mean, you know, most of the times I don't want to be the guy who's saying it depends. But there is a lot of things that are dependent on a lot of different factors. You know, Maslow pyramid of needs says, you know, you want to self-actualize yourself, first meet your needs, sustain yourself, and then go out, change the world. You know, like every airplane says you want to give somebody oxygen, get the oxygen first, and then go out and give somebody else oxygen. So it kind of goes the same way from an entrepreneurship perspective. You know, I've been a professional 15 years of my life. I don't think I can get an accountant out of me, but I can find room in me to have an entrepreneur along with the accountant. And I think it goes hand in hand. Living the pain and then sharing that pain drives the passion. And I don't think if I would have to, you know, I never understood the concept. There's no such thing as making money. You solve a problem by using the passion. The bigger the problem, the better the solution, the better the abundance. And by the time you figure it out, you don't even need abundance. At least in my case, I can speak for that very clearly, that once you get this taste of solving the problem, and then it becomes such a big passion and driver for you, then you wouldn't have time to enjoy because you want to solve more and more problems, and it becomes a challenge. And so it is exciting, if anything. And when I went out of the journey, I was looking for things, and I can go back and do a job and make the same money and do something else. It wasn't exciting, and it was very comforting. So I was at that stage in my life that all the other pieces personally fit in together for me to make this decision. And once you make the decision, you have now chosen from becoming an entrepreneur to an entrepreneur. It's a very cliche word, but then there's a lot of people who think about it, and then the next moment they think is how difficult it is and how many people are already doing it. And that is the worst thing you can do to an idea, because even if there are 10 million things done the same way, you will still have a completely new perspective of doing things, and it's still worth getting that out in whatever form. What I started thinking about doing it is not the idea that we have today. It evolved in less than a year, and I'm sure everybody who's on the panel and the listeners could vouch for the fact that you don't start with what you end up being. You just start with the why that you care to do and care to live, your vision and the mission statement, and everything else just goes along the way. I started as just me, myself, and I. And from there, I found the co-founder that resonated with my values. I found the investors who cared. I found the board who cared. I found the people who send me emails every single day today in the busy time and say, I think you can change it here. You can do this here. You can change this better. And so I'm not alone. You will find yourself along the journey, so many people who help you get there. You just need to have a starting point and then strong enough courage to be able to do it. And sustainability to be able to see it through, because most startups do fail because they go too fast and too quick and not having enough sustainability behind them and well thought out process behind it. So that's just a very short version of it. I don't want to take up too much time. I want to give everybody an opportunity to be able to share their thoughts if they want to.
Excellent. That's a great point. I think you are bang on it. Rahul, I'm sure you have heard. I think a lot of people are doing that. I mean, of course, not have a lot of people are running basically and running and running and running and making some money, and perhaps they lack the purpose, perhaps, and they're not mentally healthy. They're not mentally happy. So, how do you help such people? What's your strategy to help people who are running a race? And they're
Yeah,
they're
I
they're
mean,
moving faster.
it,
They're just moving faster as if they're moving on a treadmill, but they're not going anywhere.
definitely a lot of people, especially right now, might be feeling that burn or that exhaustion. And I think that's why burnout has become such a topic of global discussion right now. In fact, the World Health Organization states that, in fact, it is a global emergency. It's the second pandemic following COVID, is the mental health effects of COVID. And even though we are not commuting right now, a lot of us are still in social isolation. Um, ideally, we would be having more time to do what we want. But what we're doing is we're actually filling up that time with more work. We're working longer hours as well as we're sleeping less. And so that is making that treadmill you talked about, that metaphor, run even faster. And so now we're really feeling kind of overwhelmed by the amount of work that we have to do. And to go back to that question about connection to the work, most people don't realize that purposeful work or value-based action, that's actually one of the best ways to mitigate burnout. If you find inherent joy in what you're doing, and that's always been my litmus test for anything I've ever done, whether it's helping HIV positive mothers in Uganda, or if it's helping a Fortune 500 in the US do a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. My litmus test was always, would I do this for free? Is the action itself fulfilling enough? Am I learning enough? Is it really pushing me forward? That the action itself is worthy of doing. And then if that's the case, you're going to feel less burnt out by doing it because you're already drawn to doing it. And so that's really about aligning what is your passion to what you're doing. Now, a lot of us have jobs where we don't like the job itself, or we don't like aspects of that job. And so one of the things that I'm always advocating for, are there parts of that responsibility or that job where you can find meaning in? And maybe it doesn't even have to do anything about your title or what your main purpose of that job is, but can you find those little moments of light throughout the day where that's what's going to give you purpose? And because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to contribute. We're trying to find meaning in our everyday actions. And so having purposeful work is certainly a way that can help reduce some of that stress that we're feeling right now when we're feeling overwhelmed.
Great. Other great bit of advice, Rahul. I think the concept of enjoying what you're doing is very important, because you're going to spending 80% of your life working. If you're working, let's say 5 days a week, it was about 80% of your life you're working. It's very important to enjoy what you're doing. Otherwise, it's not worth it. So a lot of people in the world do not enjoy what they do, and a lot of times they also do not have option of changing it. What do you tell them?
Yeah, and this actually goes back to the conversation or what Dr. Rana was saying about there doesn't have to be necessarily a disconnect between what's actually happening versus your reaction to what's happening. This idea of acceptance, that regardless of that external stimuli, there's a way for you to still be, for you to be happy with it. Oftentimes, and Shani also mentioned about that gap. Oftentimes, the unhappiness or the frustration comes from, there are things that you want and there are things that you have. And that gap between those two is where we find disconnect. And so one of my favorite sayings is the key to happiness is simple. All you have to do is want what you already have. And so if you can find a way to reevaluate your expectations to saying, you know what, I have a job right now when so many people are unemployed. I have a place to sleep right now when I'm seeing people sleep out on the street. I have potable drinking water right now when a lot of people I know have bacteria and disease in their water. Figuring out ways to reconfigure your expectations is a form of practicing gratitude. And that actually is rewiring the neuroplasticity in your brain, because we are pre-programmed to identify problems. We have that negativity bias. But if we can rewire our brains to focus on the things that we already have, that we enjoy, that's going to allow us to really be happier with those jobs that we already have when we might not like every aspect of it.
Fabulous, fabulous. You're definitely bringing the point home, Rahul. I think Rahul is again emphasizing on the part of paying gratitude for what you have, focusing on things that you have, focusing on the little things that we all enjoy, but we take all of these things for granted, and we always looking for things which we do not have, and there is no limit to that point, because we reach one milestone and the milestone is now next one. And we always tell ourselves we'll be happy when we reach that milestone, and we keep pushing the milestone and we reach the previous one. So the happiness is in enjoying what you have and appreciating what you have and focusing on what you have, focusing on the solutions, not on the problems. Thank you so much, Rahul, for enlightening us on that. Dr. Rana, you have worked so much in the past in technology areas. We want to talk to you about investors now, a little bit of business side of the conversation. What do investors look for when they start, when they invest into a startup, a tech startup, a deep tech startup? What are their bucket list do they look for?
I think, first of all, it varies from the kind of investors you have, but there are common themes. Of course, you know, there was a word used by, I think, Shani, the market fit. That's, you know, the first criteria that what you're doing, is there somebody who would value that, right? That it has to be, because often we do things which we feel are valuable to us, which is what gives us pleasure. But investors look at it, okay, that's good for you, you enjoy doing it, but is anybody else values this? Okay, that sometimes is a conflict for entrepreneurs who are pursuing for different reasons. But it is, when you think about it, that if you are valuing something that you're doing, you have to find, and you can find a lot of others like you who would value what you're doing too. So you have to define your market, right? So they like to see what is your market and what is its size. But more importantly, and probably the most importantly, they look at your or team's ability to execute that, because ideas are commonplace. Ideas are very easy. You spend half an hour on Google and you can create thousands of ideas worth doing, right? Now, so that's the second thing, or sometimes the first thing, that look, are you really passionate about it? You know, are you going to continue doing this, or you'll get bored after a while? So what are your really underlying motivations for doing this? Okay, so they look at the team's ability to execute there, because everything else they can put together by putting the money in, right? So another way to look at it is, okay, if I have all the money in the world, what do I need to succeed? Okay. So does the entrepreneur have those remaining things? They don't have money, which I can provide, but do they have the rest, right? So that's in a sense is the common theme. And of course, the chemistry of the investors in the team is very important. Do they communicate well? Which amounts down to, is this guy going to listen to us? Okay. Which is always a source of conflict there, that you may initially project that you are going to listen to the investors, but the chances are no entrepreneurs really like to listen to investors, because investors have a narrower perspective of things, which is only financial, and entrepreneurs have a broader perspective of things. And finance or money is a kind of side effect of what they're doing. So there is ought to be going to be disconnect. How effectively an entrepreneur is able to manage that, navigate through that, is also a determinant of success. Okay, because once you make your early investors mad, it is kind of hard to get the second set of investors, because they always like to find out why is your earlier investor not continuing to invest in you, right? And that becomes a big negative. And that's an advice, that even though you may not like your investors, you have a disconnect, but you must have a good relationship with them.
Excellent. Great.
So
Wonderful. Those are some great points, Dr. Rana. I think he's talking about investors will look for market size, product market fit. The team is also very important, not just the idea, whether the investor, whether the founders have the right attitude, right values to run the company. Thank you so much, Dr. Rana, for telling us all those points. Etin, you come up with CPA experience in your domain experience in Countable, whereas the tech platform is taken care of by your in-house tech team, or do you outsource the tech to some other place?
It's actually both, and I did a design thinking course from MIT as well. And when I came out, I knew that if you're looking to build, business was something that I learned when I was with the firm. So learning business and doing business, and how to really look at the intricate aspects of building a team, building processes, building tech, is all part of the same business. We're always in people business. We're not in accounting or other businesses and everything. It's always about buying someone's, not buying, but getting someone's time, and then solving someone's problem using the resources that you have. And people are the best resources and the most valuable assets we have today. So working with an accounting firm, I think I did have an understanding around how to work with people, and which is very, very, very important. Way more important, in my belief, is the tech component. The tech is what immediately jumpstarts, create that disruptive moment. But then once you've created that moment, now you want to actually expand that in the world. And you need people, unless we are in a scenario where we do have that cognitive AI scenarios that are helping you grow that as well. In some cases, Amazon is going in that direction. As you can see, we will probably live in the world where both sides live and helping deploy technologies and transformation faster. From my perspective, when I was coming out, I knew that I understand the problem really well, living that pain for a good number of years. But the tech is something that is prominent, and luckily I live in the world where the digital transformation is happening much faster pace than it ever was even 20 years ago or 10 years ago. So the resources were available. All I had to do was aligning those resources with my purpose. Do I have enough buy-in in the world that says, hey, you're doing something valuable, I think I'd like to join you. And no matter what we do, whether it's co-founders or the right team or the right size, there is that alignment that is absolutely needed. We got an investor alignment, people who came with the purpose. More than half of our investors are from the professional community who understand that pain, and they said, we see the vision. And then there are some types of investors who are supporting other smaller investors, so they have a different mandate. They're looking for ROI for all the right reasons, because they have an obligation towards their investors. So we went through all that different cycle, and from coming back from a tech perspective, it's still evolving. Every day we talk about machine learning and incorporating blockchain and incorporating something else. In 5 years from now, we may have a completely different concept of how technology should function. I just feel really grateful that anybody, the message is anyone who has the right passion and really truly looking to solve, if they just go and take that leap of faith, you will find way more support than you initially thought there is. It may seem extremely challenging, But if you are coming from a position of grit and a position of willpower and saying, I'm going to continue trying, the failure is only a failure when you accept it. Otherwise, it's always learning. You just keep on trying, and I guarantee from my own perspective that I've seen consistently over and over that you will find our truth. You may not find the truth that you like it to hear, but you will find our truth that he can live by and find peace in that and continue moving forward. And from that point onwards, it becomes easier and easier and easier.
Excellent, wonderful. Great points again, Etin. I think we all can use these points. Sit back and relax and think about all these things, because even if you see Bill Gates or anybody else, they always used to take like a week off. They call it think week, and reflect on your actions, reflect on what you're doing, and think of a bigger purpose and try to achieve the bigger purpose so that you feel fulfilled. Your life is more meaningful. Thank you so much, Etin, for thinking at home. Rahul, you did an MBA from MIT. What are the best or top two, top three takeaways from your MBA from MIT?
Wow. It's they have a euphemism there. They call it drinking water from the fire hose, which means that we are intentionally going to overwhelm you all the time. And I think it's a humbling experience. One of the main takeaways is that it pays to be the dumbest person in the room. Surrounding yourself with people that, and intelligence is nuanced too. I realized really quickly when I was next to CPAs and NASA rocket scientists that I wasn't going to compete intellectually with some of these individuals on a quantitative level. But at the same time, when I got asked to make a speech in front of the class, my previous career was in the music industry, like Shawnee. I was a guitarist in a rock band for 8 years. Going up in front of a crowd was not a problem for me. And so I was like, okay, you can run my regression. I'll pitch the idea, and we all have our strengths or superpowers. And so that was one thing that I picked up, was that find people around you who complement your skill sets, that are smarter than you in a bunch of ways. And to tie it back to what Atin was talking about too, with the tech development, for me, I'm not a technical person. I'm not the person who's going to write the code. And so finding that right team, both in-house as well as outsourced dev team, which we actually have some software developers right now in India, was really important for us. And the second one, I can't even think of it right now, but I'll try to make it quick on what the second major takeaway is. I think it's similar to the first one, which was, and I actually learned it at McKinsey as well. It doesn't help that much to be kind of good at a lot of things. It's more important to recognize where your peaks are and focus on your strengths. I feel a lot of times the narrative is, challenge yourself, try new things, and try to like face that adversity, which has some value as well. But for me, it's much more about do the things that aren't as challenging for you and run with those. and I think because it's much better to be really good or excellent at a few different things rather than be a jack of all trades where you're not pushing the envelope on any of it.
That makes complete sense. Yes, absolutely. So I think that's exactly what even Tony Robbins used to say in a lot of his videos, that you must always focus on your strength. Don't worry about a weakness. Cut a check for a problem, or cut a check for things that you're weak at. Somebody else should do the things that you're weak at, and that should be their strengths. And you keep focusing on your strengths and yourself, and keep becoming better at what you are good at. That's the way you will progress more in life, and you will have a more meaningful, fulfilled life. Thank you, Rahul, for sharing those tips. Shani, coming to you. So in your company, where do you spend most of your time, and what's your focus? Your specific, where do you spend your time, and what's your focus in your company? You are muted, Shani.
Our focus is on changing or improving the way people interact with content today, but also in an aspect that is more artist friendly or creator friendly. That's where we are. We are unfortunately an investment fund, so we do work also focus on the financial aspect and the IRR and the return for the investors. But it's very important for us that the core community focuses on developing new things. I spend most of my time listening. And to Raul's point, I think I did an incredible job in building a team of people that are far smarter than I am, that are constantly helping me think. And that's the main thing. You talked about being the stupidest person in the room. For most of my life, I was the smartest one, or at least I thought I was the smartest one, which is something I always find in common with the entrepreneurs that I meet, right? And so for identifying where you are, where you can actually learn, being around people who can contribute to the conversation, who stop and make you think, right? That's the moment. These are the places where you want to be. And then the other aspect is where you can contribute, right? Where I spend most of my time and where I think I have the most value. I also one of my greatest sins is that I'm trying to do everything because of control issues. Because I feel like there's might be something here that I'm not seeing, or there might be something there that I should be involved in, and you're trying to coordinate everything. So letting go is a big issue, I think, for any entrepreneur. And a part of it is just putting together a process that you feel comfortable with, and it's a gradual process. It's a trusting process, and it goes back to your relationships with the people that you work with, and going back to one of the points that were mentioned here is very valuable is the relationship between the investors and the startup and the entrepreneur. It's about trust, is whether or not I can continue to communicate with the entrepreneur after I give him the money in the same level he's trying to communicate with me now, right? Because as an investor, we know all the time that once they get the money, all of a sudden the whole dynamic shifts. So building that relationship, identifying strategic partners and investors that you want to help guide you. It's not from a controlling side. It's from like helping and guiding and giving you the 2 cents that they can. But then it goes back to people. It goes back to listening to why someone wants to be a part of the solution they want to be a part of. So how did they identify the need, right? Second aspect of the people, the relationship is what's going to happen when they fail, because they are going to fail. To Anit's point, they are going to fail. There's no doubt about it. Will they be able to make the switch in real time? Will they be able to acknowledge the challenges so they can salvage some of the assets that they managed to build? So this is where I spend my time trying to analyze a little bit of doing a little bit of the risk management, and listening to the entrepreneur and seeing where we think we can truly connect and add value.
Excellent. Shani, you made some fabulous points. Let me just summarize those. Shani made a very important point, which is also being endorsed by Henry Ford. Henry Ford mentioned about hiring people who are smarter than you and then trusting them to do what you've hired them for. That's a very important point Shani has made. Shani, you've also spoken about relationships. I think a study being done in Harvard for 75 years, relationships are the most important thing that you would eventually want in your life. If you have healthy relationships, you would have a healthy and a meaningful and a long life. I think that's also a very important point you made. One follow-up question I want to ask you. Do you think techno art can run without Shani?
Yeah, that's an incredibly painful point. Oh my God, just hit the nail on the head. What are you doing?
Well, I mean,
I
in other
don't
words,
think, I'll answer it from a different direction. I don't think any company can run without the involvement of the visionary. I don't think that's a possibility. I think that as much as we want to can create a scale and create a platform and create an automated process, there is a certain assets. And this, we've seen it with Apple specifically. There are certain essence that the entrepreneur, that the visionary brings to it. We have to make sure that that person is aware of the fact that he might not be the best executor, right? So to create the best scale is to identify where the vision comes in and when you need to tap back in to maintain that vision, right? To keep pumping oxygen into whatever it is you're doing. but there has to be a scale. There has to be a process that can be separated from Shani Pellet. So yeah, that's it's funny, but yes, that's totally. It's also on the question we ask as investors, of course. But yeah, it's as you said, it's a question we ask ourselves all the time, and whether or not this organization could run without me and Tristan. And we both actually represent very separate sides of the organization. Yeah, let's put it this way: we thrive to that point, but we also acknowledge that there is value to the fact that it will be different if it does.
Excellent. I think that's a great point
Yeah,
again.
Amit, quickly, just the visionary aspect. I think Shani made a very important point. To me, a visionary knows when to say no. That's the most important thing the vision brings.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Which
So,
non-visionaries probably don't know when to say no, when to say yes.
absolutely,
Yeah, it's a
absolutely.
real
So,
pain point. You're right. You're absolutely right. That's an interesting, yeah. Something for me. That's a takeaway for me this morning.
absolutely, absolutely, no doubt about it. So yes, and every organization is a visionary to go forward. It's a very important point. My follow-up question, Dr. Rana, is uh, should startups be put on autopilot mode? When you, like, for example, entrepreneurs should they target to put their companies on autopilot and move on to the next company? Should that be the aim for founders, putting the company on autopilot move to the next one, autopilot move to the next one? Should that be an aim? Should that be an aim, Dr. Rana?
Not really. But if you go, what Rahul said, that you focus on your strengths. If your strength is to take a company from zero to a certain level, and after that you're not strong, then you can move on. You hand it over to somebody who is strong in taking from that point onwards. Okay. So if your strength is really in starting things, then you continue doing that, what you're saying. You start and let others take over, and then you start something new. But if that is not the case, if you're want to see if you're a visionary and you want to see your vision go, through all the way to its completion, then you would like to stay, throughout the journey until that vision is kind of realized to some degree. So it depends upon entrepreneur to entrepreneur. There is no such single
Answer to it.
formula there.
Great. So, Shani, we have a question from the audience for you. I'm not sure whether this is subject or not, but let me ask you. So, it says, how do you look at NFT? NFT is, I think, non-fungible tokens. How can creators take advantage of this, and what are the implications on the IP side? You're muted, Shani.
For that. There are great implications on the IP side because you actually get to track the value, and Sotheby's and Christie's have been doing it for a while, and then it's kind of creating its own hype. A lot of the interesting platforms are actually coming out of Israel, and we're very excited about that. The core question is, again, the separation between the hype and the value, right? Right now, there's a hype around it. People want to be involved in it. They're trying to figure out how it can be integrated in different verticals. Brands that have a lot of money want to use it to create new assets and to monetize their assets. But the sun hasn't sank yet. So we don't really know where the value is going to be. We've had the blockchain integration aspect for a long time. So NFT is not that far away from that, right? But blockchain hasn't been fully integrated, and we haven't even identified where it can be fully integrated and present real value. If you look at the media entertainment space, you can see some of the work around virtual assets, right? Identifying virtual assets, being able to track these virtual assets. That's incredibly important from a technological standpoint, which, by the way, it's been here for 12 years. There's nothing new there. So that's on capturing that, being able to track that. On the fine art aspect, the fine arts, that can be a revolutionary thing, right? Because we don't know. People exchange hands. It's been a great instrument for money laundering. Now you can actually track what's happening, why it's valued, where it's valued, where has it been, where it's been presented. For ticket sales, it can be an incredible integration. We have to contract scouting so people can actually resell tickets, and if they can, it will be directly from the artists. The biggest difference that this brings in, whether through NFT or blockchain or whatever virtual integration and tracking systems, is that you can now bring the power back to the artist community. The artists can now communicate directly and monetize and leverage their audience directly, and not through a third party. We do have to be careful, though, and this goes back to the techno art model and mission, that these technology platforms are now turning into the bad guys, because they're the ones taking the commission. They're the one managing the relationship. They're the one making it overly complicated to use for artists. So that's where I feel like the regulators needs to step in and say, okay, there's a new revolutionary technology. It should be available to artists. How do we actually support startups, technology organizations that can breach that gap, that can let the artists leverage these tools to manage their career independently. We're doing it now. We just launched markersart.com. It's a platform that helps artists and brands connect directly. It's an algorithm that Tristan implemented that connects both sides and tells an artist which brands they should work with, and brands which artists they should work with, based on values, right? So it's not a traditional influencer platform. It actually shares the values and the values of the mutual communities. And now we are looking to integrate that into a tracking process, so both sides can, monetize the assets that they create together, right? And grow together. So, I mean, but these are the kind of solutions that we would like to see this implemented in. There's two levels of NFT, just like everything else. There's the majors, right? Warner just signed a deal to do the avatars of their artists through NFT and monetize that. There's other NFT platforms that work with more the independent artists, independent labels, so you can get on an aggregation. But at the end of the day, is what's actually going to stick. People are going to buy avatars. That's nice. It's the Tamagotchi. It starts. It's nice. There's a hype. Where is it gonna? What's the real asset that's gonna stay afterwards? And we're looking into that, but no one really knows.
Okay, it's like cryptocurrency, where there's a hype all the time, but you never know where it's gonna go. The future is still uncertain, and people are still trying their hands on it. Yes, makes sense. Rahul, how are you using technology in your project?
Yeah, it's interesting because oftentimes I question whether or not I'm even like running a tech company. I'm like, am I? Because the value itself is not the technology. It never has been. The technology is there as a vehicle of just delivering content and experiences. And so right now on our legacy platform, which is very much Zoom based, as well as we custom coded and created data visualization dashboards on emotional health for teams, that was the tech play there. But it was almost very much a consulting play at the same time. It was very services based. It's us going into organizations and really working with them and teaching skills. As we're moving to more of a SaaS play and a digital platform, one way to think about it in terms of investor speak is the Peloton for emotional well-being. That is much more of a technology play in the sense that everything's integrated under one digital roof. Suddenly all the workshops, all the daily challenges, the micro learning videos, they're all on one platform, and it's integrating with your work calendar. And so then it becomes much more of kind of this app or digital play, and it allows us to scale pretty big, because some of our employers that we're working with, people like Microsoft and things like that, they're 150,000 people just in one company alone. And so to actually create a meaningful difference in an organization that large, you either have to have an army of providers, or you need to figure out a way to scale it. And so that's how we're leveraging technology. But at the same time, like, we don't want to do it so much that it takes out the human aspect of it. One of the things that we've seen through the pandemic is things like calm or headspace. Not that they're inherently bad by any means, but they're purely tech plays. And we know that happiness and true transformation can't be something that you can stream away. It's not something that's just, on that, like this sleep story is going to do it and then I'm good. There needs to be a human element. And so that's something we want to make sure not to lose when we're thinking about scale.
Wonderful, wonderful. A great way of putting in nice words, Rahul. He is emphasizing on the fact that in his business is very important that human element is there. It's not just pure tech play streaming and getting happy by listening to some meditation. Etin, this is about last round and last 1 2 questions. You have been able to find your purpose, your meaning. How would you suggest or advise that people should find theirs?
Oh, oh my God, that's that's an amazing question. Um, okay, I'm going to try and answer the question. Please don't take me or judge me. No, I'm just kidding. So here's what I believe, and I think it worked a lot better when I actually went back and thought about it. There's the 4 stages of evolution, and I'll divide them into 2 different parts. One, I believe, is knowing, understanding, practicing, and being. So a lot of people know a lot of stuff, and then they start to understand what that really knowing looks like. They came across this concept and they start to learn and educate themselves into it and everything. They start to become an understanding. And then you get into practicing. There's no shortcuts around it. You have to then take that understanding and start to practice that until it becomes you. And at that point in time, you can't go back into knowing because you are it. So that's a more spiritual way of looking at it. That's where the change and transformation happens. So it's from the cusp of understanding to practicing is where the cusp of change and transformation happens. Coming back and looking at it from a business side of it, if you look at logical thinkers, we have flow genome study done by a lot of people that talks about scientifically how to tap into brain neurotransmitters that allows you to be able to be in the state of flow, what we call is a runner's high. The time goes and you don't even realize it and everything. You are into your best and your happiest, and how do you really tap into that state in a normal sense? And there's studies done under flow genome, and the way they say it is, you want to find a passion, you don't know what passion is, start with curiosity. And list out 25 curiosities, stack them together, which ones makes the most sense to you. And once you know curious, people don't get curious about nothing. People get curious about something that they know about. You go in a mall, you want a pant, you go look for that particular thing because your brain's reticular activation system is now looking for that and ignoring everything else, even though the best lessons in life is actually right in front of you, and you won't look at it because your brain is just fully occupied in looking for that one answer that you're looking for. So you have to build curiosity where you're curious about everything, not just curious about things that you know about. And that's a very difficult thing to build. So you have to come from that approach. And once you have that curiosity, then you start building into a motivation. And the point from curiosity to motivation is learning. Small, everyday, incremental learning. You got curious about something, but now you actually want to understand it. It's both the same lessons, but I'm putting it in different contexts. This is more scientifically proven method. And once you become a motivator, then you become an expert in that, and the passion just comes naturally. And as soon as you align them with the purpose of the problem that you're solving, you will become passionate about it. So that's how I applied that principles in my life, and it worked really well for me. And I think the last thing I would say is, once you become a butterfly from being a caterpillar, you cannot go back into being a caterpillar because the caterpillar community will not accept you. You won't look the same, you won't feel the same, you won't connect the same, so there's no going back. That's a true transformation. So you find that transformation, you'll find yourself in a different realm altogether.
Fabulous, fabulous. I don't think I should be summarizing that. I will not be able to do justice to that. Thank you so much, Etin. Thank you very much for that. In this round, guys, about we have just a few minutes to go. If you have a question to a fellow speaker or to me about IP or patents or trademarks, or to a fellow speaker, you can shoot now.
I have so many, and I'm sure all of us do. It's what you're doing right now is not fair. I would take this minute to thank you for putting together such an incredible panel. I have to say, this has been a fascinating morning. I mean, hearing your guys' perspective. I mean, Dr. Rana, I got to say, when you said you all feel like there's a sense of purpose to our lives, trust me, there isn't. That was as the moment we kind of aligned all of us and all of our egos for a second, put it aside. Let's focus on what it is you guys are actually doing and how you should do it better. So I thank you for that. I think,
Most welcome.
I just want to thank you, Amit, for putting together this incredible panel. I'll obviously will connect with everyone afterwards, but this is
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I
Thank you
I
for
won't
being
take
such
too
a
much time, but I will echo the same. Absolutely. It's been a wonderful morning. Set the stage very, very nicely. And everything remind me the fact that we are what we do in most sense, and how we believe and how we see and how we feel. So feel more, think less a little bit, because I think there's a straight decision comes from the heart rather than thinking too much. You could get caught up in the scenario of what's right and wrong versus how you feel. And sometimes the drivers also helps a lot.
fabulous, fabulous. Thank you so much, team.
Yeah, Amit, again, great panel, and it's amazing to see the transformation that is happening in this next generation of entrepreneurs. I think they are thinking more holistically about things, and it's very, very encouraging to know. I just want to add to the point that Atin made about curiosity, that instead of being curious about few things, you want to be curious about everything, and that's hard. So my process of doing that, or what I have discovered, is that there is a sort of an intermediate stage where you have to be curious about nothing before you can be curious about everything. Okay, so it's like detoxification of your mind is a necessary step. It's not a linear process that you go from being curious about few to curious about many. And that's about really standing on the side and observe, what is going on, why I'm curious about this thing and not about that, right? So this deconstruction is important before reconstruction can become. And yes, you can't go back, but where you are, you remember that is also very temporary phase. You will go somewhere else. So you're not going to stay there either. So only ways to go forward, not backwards. That's for sure. All right.
Fabulous. Yes, yes.
I thought, Mr. Rana, time tracking was a real thing. We are eventually going to go back or forward somewhere in the world. Nobody knows, but we'll
Yeah,
have.
time is our mental construction ourselves. Time isn't real. So
Yes.
Yeah, which means we can go wherever we
so
want,
we
right?
can define whichever way we want it, going forward or backward.
So I have a 3-year-old son, and he calls his watch as time. So he asked me, "Where's my time?" I said, "It's in the wardrobe." He puts in, "I have my time now." And the statement is so strong. Like, I have my time.
Very
It's with
profound.
me.
Yeah. Yeah,
So he
Very
very
calls.
powerful.
profound. Smart kid. He knows how to differentiate. He acknowledges the difference. He's wearing his time and now he's putting it aside. That's good.
Great conversation, guys. This talk is recorded. We will tag you once we upload it on social media. We'll also put some snippets on it. Thank you so much for being such a fabulous panel and being such a giver. You guys gave away all your knowledge and secret sauce, and was truly enlightening to speak to such a fabulous panel. Thank you so much again for coming this morning.
Thank you.
A
Thank you,
pleasure.
everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
You two guys take care of yourself. I'll connect all of you.
All right.
Bye bye.